Well, speaking of that, Steve, nice segue. It's not going to be a sellout on Sunday because this week the club have announced that Block 1 of the Itchen North stand is going to be closed. And I quote, following unacceptable behaviour during the Everton game last weekend. Now, they went on to say that a Premier League matchday report found that 27 missiles have been thrown across the segregation line by both home and away fans, it said. Season ticket holders in that area all got sent an email this week. They're going to be moved to Block 2 and they're going to put in extra CCTV. Steve, do you want to start on this? How's it been allowed to get to this?
How long have you got? Jesus Christ! I mean, it's very. Won't someone think of the children? Isn't it? It's pathetic. I mean, I noticed from that statement that they don't quantify exactly how many of the missiles were thrown by Saints fans. They just said, 20, exactly 27. So they've obviously spent the
home and away. Yeah,
they've spent the time going through all the CCTV, which they have in HD. They've as Premier League and FA regulations, they've got to have high definition CCTV that can identify anybody within their seat. So they've got the means to do it, and yet they've decided that rather than so they've spent their time obviously counting that there were 27 missiles thrown in either direction. They've not told us how many were from the home fans, because let's be honest, if there were a majority from the home fans, they would have said so. And B, they've decided, well, we're just going to blanket sort of punish everybody in that block, rather than do their job and go through and pick out the individuals that are
the offenders.
Yeah. That can't be difficult. I mean, how many times do we read in the papers that a fan of a club has been issued a banning order because of being found out on CCTV to have done something, whether it's throwing a missile, making a gesture, shouting something racist or discriminatory or whatever. And it just feels like it's either the club has basically decided this summer, because they didn't. I don't think they allowed anybody to buy a new season ticket in Block 1 this summer. Only those that were already there were allowed to renew.
It was certainly reduced capacity, wasn't it? They said.
And they've clearly had their sights set on this block for quite a while for whatever reason. But at the end of the day, there would be far fewer incidents in that part of the ground, blocks 1, 2, 3, and 4, if the club actually did their job and followed their own ground regulations by preventing away fans getting in the home ends. I mean, how many times have we seen on social media in the last however many number of years, going back ages, there's always away fans that get tickets in the home end, whether it's through a friend of theirs or literally just because it's been on general sale and they've been allowed to register and buy a ticket. And yet the club doesn't do anything about it. I struggle to remember the last time an away fan in the home section was frog marched out of the ground because they were identified. And it's these people that actually cause the issue, because when they get identified, the stewards do nothing, and then the people stood around, someone who's probably had a few drinks and is feeling brave suddenly starts having a pop, and it all then escalates. And
didn't the club? Wasn't there an incident last year as well where the club had sold an executive box for a game to, I think it was Newcastle?
Oh, this always happens.
So
the executive box is behind those blocks in the Itchen end,
because it's good money. Presumably, they get 10, 12 grand for one of those.
So if the club is prepared to take, their money, they know there's a risk that they're willing to accept. To do that. So don't moan at the consequences when they happen. That one was strange to me. But I mean, I sit in the family bit, so it's not so bad. Occasionally, like when you play the Man Uniteds of this world, you see kids in United shirts, but obviously because it's an 8-year-old, you can't you don't do anything. But the Everton game last week, I had a grown ass man sat next to me
in an Everton shirt, right?
Well, I thought it was a half and half scarf to start with,
which would have been worse.
Horrible things. I saw the sort of like blue flash of the scarf, and I didn't think anything. And to be fair, the guy was quiet, but it was literally sat right next to me in the family bit. So I'll be having a word with the season ticket holder who normally sits next to me and saying, "Did you sell him that ticket, or did you sell it?"
To the resale portal, maybe
to the resale portal, and they've just punted it out to an Everton fan.
There, yeah.
Like I say, to be fair, the guy was quiet, and even when Everton scored, I literally didn't notice till the 90th minute, so he must have been pretty quiet all the way through. But yeah, if you're going to do that, the consequences are there. But I mean, it will. I wasn't fully aware of the CCTV that they have to have, and I totally agree with Steve's point about it's punishing everybody rather than the individuals concerned. It's going to be easier to spot now because they're going to need better missiles to fly over the block of empty seats. So
I know
block one is obviously absolutely tiny because it's wedged right in the corner, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you've actually probably only pushed people like 10 yards away.
Yeah, it's a horrible place to sit as well.
Yeah.
Alfie, I know you ran this story this week. Do you think it relates a little bit to the football on the pitch? It seems to be a bit more of a heated season as well. Things aren't going well on the pitch, so things don't go well off the pitch, do they?
No, I don't think that's fair, to be honest. I think the Premier League this season have introduced harder guidelines, haven't they, as a part of a nationwide campaign, and this is purely a response to those, I feel, in many ways. I think it's difficult for me to comment on it because I know the club are probably trying their best and whatnot. I can only say what I see, and I agree with Glen and Steve. I always see, sat in the media area, home shirts dotted around every now and then. Against Spurs last year, it was an entire block of, and I say away shirts, a block of away fans. And what I also see is that I see the communication that fans have got, in my opinion, is probably not up to scratch. I don't think that there's been, and if there has, I apologise, but I don't think they've even publicly addressed the fact that there are away fans in the home end every single week.
No, they stick their head in the sand and say it doesn't happen.
And if they have, I apologise to them, but I don't think they have, and I think they should, because of course a lot of problems are coming from that. And it's like football, you have a laugh and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's a difficult place to be, and I think that was obvious when it was the fans forum earlier in the summer. Toby facing difficult questions on it, and he doesn't really have much room to give an answer because he's given a script. Basically, these are the rules. This is what's going to happen if they're not followed. I'm sorry, but this is how it is. So it's difficult for all parties. But yeah, I agree with Glen and Steve.
We certainly don't want to see a wall built anyway, do we? Because that's more cost to the club as well, which is not great. So be interesting to hear if anybody has been moved because of that. If they want to get in touch with us and just drop us an email or stuff during the week, that'd be really interesting.